This is John Calipari. This is Rick Pitino. They're both Hall of Fame basketball coaches, champions of great acclaim and great notoriety. As they ascended, Calipari and Pitino were compared to one another constantly, competing with one another constantly. What did that do for their relationship? Well, Pitino says they were never really friends, but never really enemies. But I don't think it's that simple. By the time John Calipari came on the scene, the slightly older Rick Pitino already had a reputation. Pitino played at the University of Massachusetts in the early 70s, then got into coaching at the University of Hawaii and on Jim Boeheim's staff at Syracuse. Pitino's early forays into recruiting drew some attention and the ire of the NCAA Infractions Committee. While coaching at a summer camp in Pittsburgh, Pitino first met John Calipari, a local teenage prospect. Evidently just because they were both Italian-American, the camp administrator started calling Calipari the next Pitino. You're going to hear a lot of that. While the next Pitino went on to play college ball, the actual Pitino's career gained steam. He turned around the program at Boston University, spent a couple years as an NBA assistant coach for Hubie Brown's New York Knicks, then resuscitated another program, tiny Providence College. Pitino helped make upperclassman point guard Billy Donovan a national star and led the Providence Friars into the Final Four in 1987. Astounding. As if to fulfill his old summer camp nickname, Calipari followed a similar path out of college. He took a job at Kansas and worked his way to the bench, learning under the legendary Larry Brown. This is important. Basketball coaching revolves around opportunity, mentorship, and confidence, relationships. It's a fraternity, and Larry Brown helped Calipari gain entry. Like any fraternity, coaches have unwritten rules, and at Calipari's next job, rumors spread that he had broken one. In 1986, Cal was an assistant coach at Pittsburgh, a member of the Big East Conference alongside Pitino and Providence. Word spread that Calipari had tried to dissuade a recruit from attending St. John's by claiming that Coach Lou Carnesecca was dying of cancer, which he was not. According to Pitino, Carnesecca complained about this rumor at the conference coaches meeting that year. But Calipari denied the accusation, and Coach Carnesecca reportedly believed him. We will come back to this. In the meantime, fast forward to 1988. Umass needed a coach. Pitino was otherwise occupied, back in the NBA as head coach of the Knicks, but he was happy to help his alma mater find someone else. The way Rick tells it, he met with the UMass athletic director to push for Calipari, despite the rumors circulating among fellow coaches. He spun those concerns the AD had heard as exactly the reason Cal was the man for the job. Then Rick wrote a check on the spot to help cover Calipari's initial salary. We will come back to this story too, but whatever the case, Cal got the job and did exactly what Pitino had done at Providence. He recruited top-notch players to UMass and returned the Minutemen to contention. The Pitino comparisons only mounted. Meanwhile, Pitino himself came back to college as head coach of the storied Kentucky Wildcats. So, for the first time, these two entered the 1990s on level footing, each the head coach of a D1 team. When UMass visited Kentucky in December of 1991, their flight from a tournament in Alaska didn't arrive until around 3 a.m. on game day. Calipari requested a delayed tip-off. Pitino rejected him, then led the home team to an easy win. Umass and Kentucky faced off again in the Sweet 16 of the 1992 NCAA tournament, and media gravitated toward the similarities and connections between the coaches. Calipari had fun with it, arriving at his pregame press conference with a homemade Rick Pitino mask and asking reporters if they had any questions for Rick. Calipari downplayed the comparison, though, painting himself as a scrappy underdog. Pitino wore Gucci shoes. Cal wore itchy shoes. Cute. Pitino kinda called bullshit on the underdog stuff, but that game did end in another convincing Kentucky victory. At one point in that game, Calipari freaked out at the refs and got called for a technical. Supposedly, it was Pitino who alerted the officials to Cal stepping out of the designated coach's box. Whatever the case, Calipari later admitted that facing Kentucky made him feel funny because, and I quote, "He didn't want to ruin a friendship. He only had a few really good friends, and Rick was one of them." Calipari often spoke fondly of Pitino. Sometimes he laughed off the comparisons, but at other times he took them as a compliment. Cal called Pitino the best there is. In 1995, when John wrote a book, he asked Rick to write the foreword. See? Cal clearly felt a positive connection here. After all, he believed Pitino got him the job at Umass. This chapter of the relationship reached its climax in March Madness 1996, when Calipari led Marcus Camby and the Minutemen into a Final Four matchup against Pitino's super deep Kentucky squad. Whole lot of future draft picks in this game. Papers called this a friendly feud, and Calipari echoed that sentiment wholeheartedly. Win or lose, he felt great warmth for Pitino. Pitino appreciated what Cal had done at UMass and said he'd do anything for him, although I will note that mentioning a mutual friend doesn't quite match Calipari's tone. Pitino wasn't clear whether he counted Cal among his handful of good friends. And I will toss in that after Kentucky again beat UMass en route to the 1996 title, a friend dining with Pitino was famously quoted saying he enjoyed the fried Calipari. That's Calipari with a P. But yeah, the media certainly thought this was a friendship, and at least one of the participants seemed to agree. The other one, maybe not as much. Then, things took a turn. In 1996, the NBA's New Jersey Nets hired Calipari as head coach, but only after Pitino turned them down. Even in the middle of his Nets introduction, Cal had to show his appreciation.
And I also want to thank Rick for not taking this job.
But then, the following year, another, more prestigious NBA job opened up. The Boston Celtics needed a coach. The Celtics met with Larry Brown about the role. Remember him? Calipari's old boss and mentor? Well, Boston didn't hire Larry Brown. They gave the job to Rick Pitino, luring him back from the college ranks with the highest coach salary in pro sports, plus managerial oversight. While happy to see the salary bar set so high, Brown was also livid. He felt that Pitino stole the Celtics gig out from under him. Larry had the job lined up, he thought, until he ran into Rick on a golf course and mentioned how much Boston was offering, at which point Pitino swooped in and took the job. Pitino's wife, Joanne, described a pretty swift backlash from within that coaching fraternity we've talked about. And Rick felt that. He felt like an outcast. When asked to comment on Calipari's rocky first season in New Jersey, Pitino was like, "What, are you trying to get all my coaching friends to hate me?" But it might have been too late. Brown ended up with the Philadelphia 76ers. This created a most interesting triangle in the Atlantic Division. Calipari in Jersey, with one of his mentors over here and another over here, and these two had beef. As soon as the 1997 NBA draft, Calipari seemed to pick a side. That night, the Celtics held the third overall pick. Pitino hoped to snag Utah's Keith Van Horn, whom he saw as the next best prize after Tim Duncan. The only thing is Larry Brown's Sixers held the second pick. Philly took Van Horn, then traded him to the Nets. Calipari had a laugh imagining Pitino punching someone and knocking over a blackboard when he found out. The Celtics settled for Chauncey Billups at 3, but rumors spread later that year that Boston already wanted to trade Billups. Pitino believed Calipari spread those rumors to spite him for the Larry Brown stuff. Rick apparently swore to never do business with the Nets or Sixers. Calipari made fun of that, too. Cal was clearly feeling different about Pitino. He spoke about friendship in past tense. When addressing the usual comparisons, he mentioned the Italian thing, then said he felt more influenced by Brown. Nets players noticed that their coach seemed unusually motivated to beat Boston in a preseason game. And here was Pitino saying he always considered John a friend, but Calipari countering that they were never really close, that some misconception had spread about them talking all the time. John, buddy, I think people were just going off what you said. Anyway, Calipari's NBA career didn't last much longer. His Nets got swept by the '98 Bulls, then opened the '99 lockout season in awful shape. Cal got fired, then joined Brown's staff in Philly until the next opportunity emerged. In 2000, the University of Memphis presented that opportunity. Another fixer-upper college program. Calipari was back in his wheelhouse and comfortably distanced from Pitino, hundreds of miles away in another league. Oh. Well, what the fuck, Rick? After following Calipari into the NBA's Atlantic Division, here he was back in college, coaching the Louisville Cardinals, members of Conference USA alongside Calipari's Memphis Tigers. Here we went again. Rivalry renewed, comparisons of careers and style, questions about their relationship. In neighboring states, these guys meddled in each other's business more than ever. Calipari further developed his reputation as a brazen recruiter, positioning Memphis as a pipeline to the NBA. High school superstar DeJuan Wagner was the son of a former Louisville player and considered attending Louisville. But then Cal hired his dad, Milt Wagner, to work at Memphis. DeJuan followed, then Cal pushed him toward the NBA. By contrast, Louisville focused on program players, and Pitino sort of turned the tables of mockery, suggesting Calipari was a hands-off coach who deferred to people below him. A champagne and steak guy, not a hot dog and beer guy. It sounds a lot like Cal describing Rick a decade prior. At least in private, these guys still held something resembling mutual care and respect. Calipari reached out to console Pitino after Rick lost his brother-in-law in 9/11. But in public, when it came to their teams and matchups, proximity engendered annoyance. Calipari implied Louisville got away with rough play. Pitino called Cal amateurish and unethical for lobbying the refs like that, and said he had psychological problems. Pitino didn't want the NBA's Vancouver Grizzlies to relocate to Louisville and steal attention from his team. Calipari loved the idea of a pro franchise in Memphis. Calipari kept accusing the Cardinals of roughhousing. Pitino mocked him for blabbing. You just pull that little cord and things come out. It continued like this until 2005, when Louisville moved conferences to the Big East. Calipari prodded Pitino for refusing to schedule games with Memphis after that point. But hey, at least that would be the end of it. It's hard to keep beefing when you're no longer part of a rival. Oh, come on. After bringing Derrick Rose to Memphis, Calipari found both success, almost a national title, and NCAA scandal. So he bailed and took a new job at Kentucky, Pitino's old team, and the bitter nearby rival of Pitino's present team at Louisville. While Rick was busy with his own weirder, grosser scandal, this fucking guy stepped all the way back into his business. Huge pain in the ass. Calipari actually called Pitino before taking the Kentucky job, but reporters considered it a cold formality. They were not friendly. If they ever dined together, it was in a large group. When they attended the same events, there was a palpable chill in the air. John insisted he didn't hate Rick, that they were fine. But he had to know people would notice when he didn't take his assigned seat next to Pitino at the 2009 NBA draft, or when his list of great Kentucky coaches didn't include Pitino. Calipari couldn't even mock coaches wearing funny-colored suits without people thinking of Pitino. I think you look great, Rick. I'm just kidding, I don't. You look terrible. Yet again, the two coaches feuded. Yet again, they grew exasperated answering questions about one another. Yet again, they made jokes at each other's expense. Cal called Pitino's conference overhyped. Pitino called Cal's conference second-rate. Cal said his program dominated the state. Pitino implied Cal was jealous, ignorant, malicious, paranoid. Pitino sought a job coaching the Puerto Rican national team, a potential recruiting advantage. Calipari followed by getting hired as the Dominican Republic coach, an even clearer recruiting advantage. This is like spy versus spy stuff. Maybe the two coaches didn't hate each other, but they went out of their way to irritate one another. That's not just rivalry. That is beef, especially when you consider how close these guys once seemed. But on that note, a 2011 Sports Illustrated piece poked holes in some of the tales that informed our understanding of a Pitino-Calipari friendship in the 1980s. Maybe even Calipari's understanding. That old rumor about Calipari telling a Big East recruit that Lou Carnesecca had cancer? Perhaps it was Pitino, not Carnesecca himself, who mentioned it at the '86 coaches meeting. That story Rick loved to tell about lobbying for Umass to hire Calipari and even paying part of his salary? A myth on both counts. Multiple insiders said so. So maybe this long-time connection was kind of fake to begin with. In that same story, Pitino refused to talk about Calipari, saying he didn't really know the guy. In response, Calipari had nothing but sarcasm to offer. Thanks for all the help, Rick. It is relevant here that Cal was dominating the basketball part of this relationship. Kentucky beat Louisville to big recruits like Marcus Teague. Kentucky beat Louisville nearly every time they played each other. The script was flipping. Calipari was moving out from Pitino's shadow, fully realizing his status as the bigger deal coach, which made this feel like the ultimate showdown. 2012 NCAA Final Four. Tournament favorite Kentucky versus Louisville, a 4 seed on a surprising run. To win his first title, Calipari would have to best Pitino in their highest stakes battle ever. And he did. Anthony Davis and the Wildcats withstood a Louisville comeback, then went on to win it all. And in this outcome, I think we found resolution, or at least the beginning of it. Immediately after the game, Pitino embraced Calipari and told him he was rooting for him to win the championship. Pitino and Louisville actually won it all the following season, and he was seen hanging out with Calipari soon thereafter. In 2014, Seth Davis detected a diminishing beef.
And I sensed a bit of a thaw happening there, that some of the things that we're talking about, I just sensed that, you guys are a little longer in the tooth now, you've accomplished a lot. And you may never be great friends, but that a lot of the baggage in your past is kind of giving way to the years, if you will.
Which led to that key Pitino quote.
I don't think we've ever been enemies, and I don't think we've ever been true friends.
So let's assess that. Maybe Rick Pitino and John Calipari weren't really friends back when everyone, including them, was saying that. Maybe they were just members of a coaching fraternity looking out for one another when it made sense. If anything, I reckon the closest they've come to a real friendship is more recent times. Check out Pitino's 2017 appearance on Calipari's podcast if you want to hear for yourself, or if you just want to hear John Calipari read Papa John's ads. The title of the episode is Everyone's Saying These Two Are Gonna Fight, but the conversation is long, warm, and jovial. I listened to it. They sound like friends. And this was recorded before a huge pay-for-play scandal pushed Pitino out of Louisville. They were still part of the rivalry. So what about being enemies? Well, Calipari puts it this way at the end of the podcast episode.
Yeah, we're competitive. We want to kill each other. But you're still out there saying this profession is very hard, and the only people that know what we're going through are other coaches. That's it. Let me just end on this. I wish you luck until we play you next year, and I hope we beat your brains in next year, because that was just miserable for me walking off that court.
And I think that's a fair assessment of their early careers or the years after Calipari's 2012 title. A fierce rivalry between people with mutual respect. But in the middle there, when they were following each other from league to league, when they were battling over NBA prospects, then college recruits, then the state of Kentucky, when they were spreading rumors about each other and calling each other names, that was not just rivalry. That definitely wasn't friendship. For a while, that was beef. Thank you so much for watching this episode of Beef History. If you love Coach Beef as much as I do, we've got plenty more of it for you.